Welcome back. We've got the quad pretty much buttoned up at this point. I just put on this. This is called Grip. It's actually very sticky, and it'll hold your battery in place and give it just a little bit of soft mounting. And the battery strap here is really meant for a bit bigger battery, but when you're flying a smaller battery, it's a good idea to position it more towards the rear. Just to help balance out the GoPro, because the GoPro is a big heavy weight going to be hanging off the front side here. So just slide it back just a little bit. I've got a battery strap that'll go all the way around the quad and provide an additional connection point just to keep it from, moving around a little bit. And that'll be sufficient for holding it in place back here. With a larger battery, you really don't need two straps, but it should stay in place without any trouble on a long-range flight. You're not doing flips or anything else with it, so it should be fairly easy. But this just gives peace of mind here. Both of those have strapped on pretty well. The other thing we can do is just make sure that everything lights up again. As soon as I touch these together, it should make our startup noises. Yep, sounds good. After that, we can disconnect again. What we're going to do now is try and get it configured in Betaflight. So I'm going to try and use OBS to make that happen, and we'll see how that goes. But this is the port that we want to connect to is down here inside the chassis. Hopefully you can actually see that. So it's this one here, and it is a what are they called? USB mini or micro, one of those two. It's this one. If you can see that, it's kind of that noise. Yes, that is the battery disconnect noise. So if we actually touch the battery together for 1, 2, 3, and then let go, it should turn that off. Has it? We can actually check. It shouldn't. The red light is still blinking. Anyway, disconnecting, taking the battery off. Underneath the battery there is a little red flashing light. There's a little button on that pad, and we're going to just push it in and hold it until the red light turns off. And that's our warning light. That's just going to tell us that, hey, this thing is going to beep until you push that button. So we'll this one isn't even connected. This one is. So let me get OBS up and running, and hopefully we can see everything we're doing. So one of the things we need to do before we jump into this is update our DJI Air unit. That requires us to be connected to the battery, and it also requires us to have a USB-C connection. So what we'll do is we'll connect up the battery real quick and plug in our Air unit. And we're going to set this here kind of in front of the fan just to give it some air. And then we'll fire up the DJI Air, DJI Assistant 2, DJI FPV series. And what that's going to do is give us our chance to activate our Air unit, and then it's going to ask us a couple questions. Just can't confirm. When the activation is done, do not take the user survey. They lie. It takes forever. The firmware needs to be updated to the latest version in order to have access to all the various pieces of the software if you want it to display correctly. So we're just going to click confirm, and now it's a wait. So you just got to sit here and wait for it to finish installing. And once it does, it shouldn't take more than, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes, but don't, you never can tell. So I've had it take like 8 or 9 minutes sometimes, but I can't tell you why it behaves one way one time and a different way another time. So that's what we're going to do for the next couple of minutes, is just wait for this to finish. And it's transmitting now. And once that's done, we will disconnect our battery, and then we'll jump into beta flight. And once we're in beta flight, then we can reconfigure we can update the flight controller to the latest version, which you should always do, because the features kind of go in parity. So with updates to the DJI come updates to beta flight typically. So if you're wanting some new feature or field to show up in your OSD, chances are it's been added in the latest version. So I think 1.14 or 1.15 is probably the oldest you want to go. 1.16 or 1.17 are the latest ones, depending on which version of the flight controller you have. So we'll see that in a second. But 4.2, I might have said 1.17. I meant 4.1.7. 4.2 is right around the corner. They're in like release candidate 3. They usually don't do a release candidate 4, but sometimes they do. So once the beta period is done, that'll become the new version to put on all the quads, and you can update to that or continue flying it on 4.1. There's no reason to upgrade unless you want some of the new features. But for now, just waiting. While we're waiting for that, I'll grab my remote and my goggles. DJI goggles and a battery. So very important, only ever plug 4S batteries into your goggles. I've heard that some of the aftermarket stuff that you can get for that, can be hit or miss. So 4S, don't buy anything until DJI supports 6S. Just trust me on that. All right. We're at 79%. Let's create a new model for this one. Create model. And we're going to do a multi. And I usually just take the defaults here. So page through each channel, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then finally, T-E-R A or T-A-E-R, yeah, is the layout for this. So those are the channels 1 through 4, and then long press to confirm, do not back up, and then page into it, and we'll set this as the we'll do the Icky, ICHY. And we'll come on down. You can leave all of this stuff alone. So something to note, I like using these switches. Some people like switches up top for things. I prefer putting switches there. And what we'll end up doing is I like having arm right there, and then flip over after crash right there, and then we're at 95%. I usually use this one here for mode. So all the way down is usually off. So that's how I think about it. So if you live in North America, light switches, the down position is typically off. So I tend to think of this as being, on, off. And so we'll set it up like that. Internal RF mode should be set to off, and external RF mode, if you're using Crossfire, should be set to Crossfire, CRSF. Okay, and then we'll page over. Oh, we're at 100%, so we need to continue going. So the DJI update is complete. We want to disconnect from power as soon as we can and disconnect from USB, because otherwise this air unit gets very, very warm and toasty. And I've got a little computer fan here hooked up to my I'm going to just turn this off for a second because it buzzes. So I've got a little computer fan hooked up to the bench power supply just to blow a little bit of air over it. I find it helps. We are completely disconnected at this point. We're done with the DJI Assistant. Yes, quit. And we are going to have to hold in this button to turn this off. I think that's off, isn't it? I can't see. Blind in one eye, can't see out the other. All right. So here we have our USB cable, and we are going to, I don't have enough space on my desk, I really don't. We're going to plug this in, and we should see that in Betaflight. Hopefully that will show up in a second. All right, so we're plugged in, and Betaflight should update with the COM port. I'm using Windows, so your Mac may behave differently, or your Linux box probably behaves very differently. I've actually never bothered with Linux trying to get this to work. So, but shouldn't have to do anything except connect. And we can see that we are on firmware 4.1.2, and that our target is the HBRO Kakute F7. So we just need to remember that it's the Kakute F7 HBRO, and what we'll do is we'll come right down here to the bottom, and we'll type diff all. We'll type version just to have it in the save file, and we'll click save to file, and I just save it in my downloads directory, and at that point we're done. BL puts us into bootloader mode, and now we should see this come up as DFU. And if it doesn't, we need to go to Impulse RC. It's NC:/tools. We want the Impulse RC driver fixer. Yes, I want to run it always and forever. Installing the DFU driver. Who knows what it's doing or why. Connected. All right. Okay. We'll close out of beta flight and fire it back up. Beta flight. It's beta flight. Configurator. Alright, so now we have a DFU up here at the top. We click Update Firmware. We select the firmware from our drop down here, and we have a Kakute F7, and it was HBRO. So Kakute F7, we do have the HDV version, so we're going to select that one. And this is 4.1.7. We want the full chip erase set to true. Load the firmware online, and then click flash firmware. So loading the firmware means you're downloading the firmware to your local machine and then uploading it to your flight controller. So it's a little confusing, but basically you're connecting and you're feeding an update directly to this piece of hardware from your USB cable. So you download that firmware from the repository where it's located and push it up. If you were to say build your own version of Betaflight or iNav or any of the others, you could actually load firmware local. So you could click the button to say load firmware, and it'd prompt you for a pop-up window to say, hey, what .hex file do you want to load, and you select the one, and it would transmit that up and hopefully not destroy your board. All right, so we have successfully installed the latest version. We are going to connect. This is to apply custom defaults. You absolutely want to do that. The custom defaults are what sets up all your devices and everything to make them available. So now we want to start with the ports tab. UART1 is the MSP connection, and UART6 is serial. We're actually going to turn off UART6. We ended up using UART3 for serial, and we ended up using UART2 for our GPS. So we're going to put GPS right here on the sensor input, and then we're going to click save and reboot, and hopefully it comes back. Good. And we'll connect. And the ports tab should reflect our updates. So we have MSP connection here. That's for our DJI Air unit. We have a serial connection. That's for our Crossfire on UART3. And then we have GPS on UART2. Now, under the configuration tab, this is where everything starts to happen. We are quad X formation, so there's a bunch of different ones here, hexes and octos, so you really don't need to play with that. But motor direction is reversed because we're running what's called props out. So you need to tell the flight controller that. We will be using DShot 600 with this flight controller, and we want to use bidirectional DShot. What that means is that the firmware on the ESC may need to be updated before we can really turn that on. Motor poles, it's a 14-pole motor. Throttle idle speed is usually pretty good. We want to come down, and we don't need to change how we're oriented, but we do want 180-degree arming. That allows it to be flipped over upside down and still arm. So if you ever have to turtle out of a situation, that's how you do it. We're going to call this one the Warthog. And we have an accelerometer, barometer. Let's see. We're using serial-based receiver. So if we wanted to use the DJI for the receiver, we could leave this set to S-Bus, but we'd have to go back to the ports tab and enable UART6. Otherwise, we're going to set Crossfire here. We need to turn on GPS for navigation and telemetry. And I believe this one is, I think magnetometer declination needs to be set to 180. And because remember we faced north away from us, so I believe that is rotating that around. And then I think this was, I can't remember if this was NMEA or U-blocks, but one of those will work and one of those won't, and we can see that on the tab as soon as we connect a power source. So now when we connect a power source to this, okay, we should get we should be able to see, we need to turn on expert mode, which gives us GPS, and under the GPS tab we should be able to see something. I don't see anything at all. So we'll go back to configuration, we'll go down to NMEA and change that to U-blocks, save and reboot. And then we'll reconnect, go back to GPS. Well, it says we have GPS. But I'm not seeing any. Oh, well, I see some weak signals, so maybe it just needs a little bit to come online. Anyway, we can move on. The receiver tab, right now we have nothing, and what we're going to do is TAER, because that's our order, and then we'll fire up our and we'll go here, and what you want to do is long press this, and that goes into radio setup, and then the under the, you should have installed an SD card with Crossfire, and go into Crossfire, run the crossfire.lua script, execute. The XF Micro is this device back here. Click on that and go down to binding, and we should have it should prompt us to update the receiver. We should, yep, and should move your move your radio away from the receiver. Just, you don't have to move it far, but it sometimes it'll sit there on 0% updating until you move it like a foot away or 2 feet away from where it was. And then right now we're at 12% update. And what we're doing is we're actually updating that Crossfire module on your quad right now with this. We're installing the latest version of the firmware at the time that you installed the USB card in this. And that is going to make sure that the two work seamlessly together. If you don't do that, you gotta, muck about with it a little bit. You should do this if you're using a new controller. So you need to plug in the battery while you're holding the button down, and that will get you to a point where you can bind again. So it goes into bind mode. When you first get a brand new Crossfire, it's automatically in bind mode. It's one of the greatest things about Crossfire. But when you have to rebind to another controller, you should go ahead and hold down the button, plug in the battery, puts it into bind mode, come back to your remote, press the button, and that should get you to a binding. And we're at 100%. It's going to take a second to update. RX is loading. Okay, that's it. And now when we exit out of here, we should see two of these. We should see the XF Micro and the XF Nano. And then we have Betaflight 417 listed down here. That lets us do over-the-air updates of our transmitter. It gives you all sorts of options. So we're going to go into Nano XF Nano RX, and here is where you can change what your outputs are for the output 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 on your unit. So you can change it up and make RX your TX and vice versa. Same thing with, all of these ports can be remapped to other things. So really nice feature. We actually don't need to do any of that. We're done. We're going to go back to our Icky, and then we're going to press the button, jump into that, page over, and we're going to go and we're going to set up our inputs. We need an input for our switch. I like to call this the ARM switch. It's just A is what I pick for that, because it doesn't really matter as long as you know what everything is. So switch 1 is going to be the ARM switch. There we go. Or switch A, I should say. And then exit out of this. And then go down one more. We'll set the mode switch. And enter, exit. Go down to 2. And then flip the switch you want to use and exit. And then go down one more, and we're going to call this one the buzzer, because that'll turn on our buzzer for us. Go down here and there. And that's that. And then with these inputs, they're not going to go anywhere unless we tell it to send that to the flight controller. So we need to go into the mixer and change it so that channel 5, which will be aux1, it's confusing as hell. Channel 5 is aux1, channel 2 or channel 6 is aux2, etc., etc., etc. So the first 4 channels are your AETR, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4. Very confusing. Trips everyone up. So just all you got to do is click on it and click exit. Click on it and click exit. It'll adopt the name that you had from the other screen, and that's it. That's all of the configuration. I like to turn everything off, exit, and now we can come back over here and are looking at Betaflight. We can see that our quad is flipping out a little bit. So our throttle is mapped incorrectly. We're going to click save. Now our throttle is mapped correctly because I changed the channel output map, but I hadn't actually saved it. So now we can see that when I yaw right, it goes right, and yaw left, it goes left, and then the throttle moves up and down when we roll, and if we pitch, it behaves exactly the way we want to see it. If we flip our switches, we should see aux1 go low. If we switch our mode, we should see aux2 go low. And if we switch our buzzer, we should see aux3 go low. And we do. So we're in good shape here. I'm just going to click save, and we will go down to the modes tab. So we're going to add an arming mode, okay, and that's going to be the switch, aux1, and then you just drag this slider over to set that. We're going to add an angle mode, and we'll set that all the way up on the mode switch. And then if we go down here a little bit, we should see a beeper. We're going to set that to the middle position of this switch right here. So if we put it all the way up, that's flip over after crash. If we put it in the middle, we want it to beep, and then that's it. So we've got that one set, and then down here a little bit we want flip over after crash. When we do this one all the way up, we want it to enable flip over after crash. And we'll save that, and we've got our everything beeping at us. If we beep beep beep, all right, good. Now I think that's it. We should double check that our motors tab, so we should, if you see errors here, it means that you've got a problem. So let's go ahead and spin up some motors. We should spin up motor 1 first, and that should be this back corner, and it is spinning in the wrong direction. It should be spinning this way, so we need to reverse that one. So reverse number 1, and number 2 is spinning in the correct direction. Number 3 is spinning in the correct direction, and number 4 should be spinning in the wrong direction. Yep. So normally 2 and 3 or 1 and 4 need to be reversed if you kind of map them into your or into your ESC. It's just the way it always works out for me. You may have a different experience with it. We're going to go ahead and disconnect, so we need to reverse 1 and 3. So we'll disconnect and we'll go to BL Heli. Actually, it's NC : /tools. I put all my tools in a different directory. So BL Heli 32, because this is a 32-bit ESC, we want to select that, and we're going to connect to COM port 18. Always a new version. Connect and read setup. Okay, good. And then we're going to right? Is it? No, that's right click on number 1 and switch that to reversed. Click right setup. Okay, number 2 we should see as normal direction. Number 3 as normal. Number 4 as normal. We want to change that to reversed. Okay, and then click right setup. Okay, and that should be all the configuration we need to do to make sure our motors are spinning in the correct direction. And then we can, we're done with this one. We will click disconnect. It'll reboot our flight controller. And then we can go right back to beta flight. And if we come down here to our motors tab real quick, we can actually click this button, go over to our flight our switch here, and enable it. And now we can right and left, we can verify everything is going in the right direction. Yep, everything looks good. And turn that one off, and we're pretty well done. The OSD, we need to plug in our, unfortunately I don't have any way for you to see this on your screen. So what I like to have immediately is the battery average cell voltage. So I turn that one on, and the battery voltage. Those two things I like to have over on the left hand side. I just find it easier to look there for those data points. We're going to have GPS, latitude, longitude, sats, and speed, and we're going to set those and the home direction and the home distance. We'll see how much of that actually works. So that's the home distance. We'll set the latitude and longitude up there, and the home direction, and the number of satellites, and this little pointer we'll put right in the middle, I guess. And hopefully that shows up on the screen. Oh, I'm an idiot. I haven't bound it yet. The way to bind, there's a little tiny, there's a port, a little tiny, you press it in there and the light turns red, and then you come over here, and underneath the power cable, there's a little tiny button there. Hold that in for a second. Hold it in for a second. There it goes. And then now it's connected. And let's see what we got. So I have number of satellites and direction. I don't have any of my other stuff. So, but that's not, I think that's okay. So we should be good with that for now. Yeah, we should be good. And I think we'll save this. We don't need to do anything with the video transmitter or any of these others. I actually think we're done with setup now. We will disconnect and exit out. Anyway, I think that's it. I'm going to disconnect the quad and disconnect the USB cable. and hold in the little button to turn off the beeper, and power down the remote. And disconnect the goggles. And that's it. So that's, let me stop OBS before I continue. Stop recording. All right. So hopefully it saved all that shit in a file somewhere that I can use. Anyway, that is the basic configuration of a quad. So if you ever have to do it again, you've got plenty of information to get you going. So hopefully I covered everything well enough. I didn't set up two-stage arming on this. The client wants to use two-stage arming, so I gave them sort of a tutorial on that, which is exactly what I'd follow. They said they got it set up. So in the one of the tabs, you would just select as the output, or the mixer is what it's called in the Open TX. It's called mixer, and in there you just select your logical switch that you had created for arming, rather than, you know, what I did, which was selecting a switch by flipping it. So that's how you would organize, or you would connect that logical switch to your flight controller to tell it when to arm. I think that's everything. I think I've covered all of it, and I think it's ready for a quick hover test in the basement here. So I think I'm going to do that real quick, get the props on it, and get it set up so that I can test fly it tomorrow. Thanks for watching.